butter, right, is narrative, how people tell their stories. By giving language to our experience, we gain awareness of our conceptual models of the world, okay? And what I've learned over time is that the way people tell their stories is a window into their model of the world, and that there are healthy narratives and not so healthy narratives. And in general, in my clinical experience, when people come into the room and they tell their life story in such a way that they're always the victim of other people and circumstance in the world, those are people who are, number one, not doing well, and number two, not going to do well going forward unless they change that narrative to acknowledge what they've contributed to the problem. And the reason for that is because the way that we narrate our lives is not just a way to understand our past, it actually is our roadmap for the future. So if I see myself as a victim, and that's my narrative, I will literally create victimhood for myself going forward. I will literally change my sensed experience so that whatever happens, I'll make sure I end up as a victim. When people with severe addiction get into recovery, one of the most palpable changes that I see is the way that they narrate their lives. They go from, in addiction, talking about their lives as if it's always everybody else's fault, to in recovery, talking about their lives in a way that says, oh, you know what? I could have done better here. Or you know what? That's something that I keep doing that really messes with my life that I want to change. And I'm going to figure out how to change that.
Why is it so hard to take responsibility in such a way?
Great question. We just hate to do it. Because when we do it, we feel shame. And shame is an incredibly painful emotion. It's like a gut punch of an emotion that is associated with fear of abandonment, fear of being shunned by our tribe. We'd much rather paper that shame over with anger and resentment toward others.
It's interesting because there'll be different groups of people listening to this now. There'll be the high responsibility group that just love and rather than taking responsibility because they think taking responsibility means that they are strong. It means that I'm so strong, I can take the blame and withstand it. And it's funny because the more I've learned to take responsibility for things in certain areas of my life, the more I become proud of myself and the more I think I'm strong. And I'm like, oh, look at me, I can take responsibility for anything. And then if you go down the spectrum, you eventually get to the end of the spectrum where you've got people who, even as they heard you say that, will feel cognitive dissonance. They'll feel a sense, like it'll irritate them. It'll piss them off. And they will be the whataboutery gang. They'll be saying, yes, but what about Dave? He did this to me. And they'll like the immediate reaction would be, they're pissed off. They've probably gone now. They've gone. So we're not even talking to them anymore. But it's fine, we can talk about them. They're no longer here.
Right,
but that group of people, my question really is, how do you speak to that group of people and convince them that actually taking personal responsibility is a good thing for them? And if they're focused on what their core values or their North Stars in their life, then personal responsibility is the path there, not blame, not victimhood. Like how do you turn those people around?
Great question. And I have to say, what I know about this, I learned from Alcoholics Anonymous and what they do, because they do something that's really incredible. First of all, it's necessary to validate somebody's victimhood. So this is to say you have been wrong. If they really have been wronged, to validate that, or you experienced this trauma, or you were born into this crappy situation and you were just a kid and you had no choice about that, and to really acknowledge that. But then the fourth step of the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about looking at each of those situations and after writing down, like, this person wronged me and exactly what they did. So, taking time to focus on the resentment, right? Then only after that to say, okay, but is there anything that I did that contributed to that problem? Is there anything at all that I could have done differently? And for a little kid, born into a horrific situation, there's not much, right? That a kid could have, we don't expect a child to take responsibility, but the adult who was that child, who continues to perpetuate some of the harms they experienced on other people, now we're talking. Now you can begin to take responsibility for your actions in the world. So I think starting with validating, the trauma or the victimhood or the way in which we were wronged, processing it, so giving it airtime, right? But not stopping there, which is by the way, often, in therapy, certain types of therapy, that's often where we stop. We don't then take it that very important next step and say, but let's go and look at that again. And is there anything at all that you're contributing to this problem? Maybe it's just that you continue to ruminate about it, right? That you're ruminating on your resentments is in a way your happy place. And maybe that's what you need to stop doing.
So that form of sort of psychotherapy that stops there can help keep us sick and make us sick.
Yeah.
It's interesting because someone that's in that therapy room who has ruminated themselves all the way down to having a low self-esteem, being depressed or whatever, it appears to me that people who are at that sort of ground floor state find it hardest to take responsibility for some reason. And just that's an observation in my life that the people that I have met that are the worst still, that struggle the most with taking responsibility, are those that have a very low self-esteem. So it's almost this double-edged catch-22. And then I've also pondered whether, someone that never takes responsibility is more likely to have bad things happen to them, make mistakes, which are then going to further hurt their self-esteem, which are going to make it even harder to take responsibility. So I guess the question is there a relationship between my current self-esteem and my ability or inability to take responsibility for a situation?
Yeah, great question. It brings to mind a patient of mine who said to me that, that he had very, very low self-esteem. And he said, essentially, Dr. Lemke, I'm the piece of crap around which the universe revolves. Meaning that he had his own brand of narcissism in which he wasn't the most successful person. He was the most successful at being the least successful person. And that became his identity, right? That was sort of how he saw himself and also how he saw the world. And it became very entrenched. And it was a kind of a narcissism because he created then situations in order to perpetuate, I'm the worst of the worst. So I think the ways in which we get these sort of entrenched ideas about ourselves and the world can really hold us back from seeing clearly who we are, who other people are, and what the possibilities are.
Does our personal narrative need to be positive?
I mean, what do you mean by positive? Like, rah, I'm great.
Almost like have a positive ending. I was thinking about the personal narrative I've created in my life. And my personal narrative is like, kid, born in Africa, came to the UK, a little bit of racial abuse here and there, felt different, shame, insecurity, parents weren't around, this made me independent, shame made me motivated, and then I did this, and it went well. That's like my personal narrative. But if my personal narrative was moved to Plymouth from Botswana in Africa, a little bit of shame, a little bit of pain, parents weren't around, my parents didn't love me, people don't love me.
Right.
If my personal narrative ended there, would it be detrimental to me ever becoming successful, happy, healthy? I'm just wondering, because we all have a personal narrative. We have like a story. If we're up on stage and someone passes the mic to us and says, tell us your story, we'll narrate this version of events, skewed towards victimhood, to heroism, to,
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, how we narrate our lives is important, right? It's not trivial. And there are healthier narratives and there are not healthy narratives. And I would argue that the victim narrative, where perpetuates victimhood, you could make the same argument that the hero's journey narrative perpetuates herohood. Having said that, if we get too stuck in any fixed identity or any narrative, I think that can become its own trap, right? And then we wall ourselves off, feeling like we have to show up in a certain way or be a certain person. And I wonder if you have that experience. Like, I know you have this hero's journey, and now you got to be this hero, and I mean, I can imagine that would be burdensome at times.
Yeah, I think it causes a lot of like dissonance internally. When I say dissonance, I mean discomfort internally, because people meet a version of you that doesn't reflect the version of you that you know. So like the experience you have when you go to the gym or something.
Yes.
And I say this to my team all the time. Anyone that knows me personally has heard me say this 50 times. I will say the phrase, I just don't understand what these people are talking about. Like, I just don't get it. And I said to my team the other day in the office, I went, it's almost like I think they're lying to me. And I was in this meeting.
When you say you don't understand, you mean when they praise you?
Yeah.
Or okay, yeah.
It's so unbelievable what they're saying to me that it feels like I've not even watched the Truman Show, I just know what it means, but it feels like these people are just all lying to you.
Yeah.
And I was saying, I think I was talking to Jack and the team the other day about going to Thailand and being so far away from home and people coming up to you, like thousands of people doing this meet and greet thing, and saying these things to you. And I said to the team, I was like, part of my brain, it's like these people are lying to me. And also,